welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of Gamecocks.
This is Rodgers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rodgers scores! Jackie Bradley Jr. delivers for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick plays it in at the buzzer. That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody. Happy New Year, Gamecocks, and welcome into Gamecock Pod, live episode number 1666. I hope everybody had a great Christmas and a happy New Year, although we were probably a sad bunch of Gamecocks on New Year's Eve after the Gamecocks dropped a 21-17 decision to big fat Brett Bielema. I'm just going to call him Belia from now on. At any rate, we'll dive into that. But first, as always, let's jump into our Nana's Porch news, notes, and highlights. What's up, Clint? Happy New Year, brother. Brought to you by the award-winning full-service catering company servicing the greater Charlotte area, Nana's Porch, your go-to for all your catering needs, whether it's a banquet, a wedding, a corporate event, or the big backyard bash with a whole hog barbecue. Nana's Porch is your go-to for all your catering needs. So go to the website, nanasporch.com. That's NANASPORCH.com. Get in touch with my good friend Chris Payne. Get on the calendar. We just had a patron call him and get on the calendar for his daughter's wedding. Top of the morning to you as well, William. So you'll love it. I guarantee it. And if you don't have a big catering event coming up, go to the website anyway and order Nana's Porch award-winning pimento cheese. All you have to do is go to the homepage, click on pimento cheese. It'll take you to a hyperlink where you can order your favorite, either the great regular flavor or smoky jalapeno. You can get a 2-pack for order now. You'll have it in time for the college football playoff semifinals. It's great just to have in your refrigerator for a snack, a sandwich, on a cracker, or my favorite, on a Stacy's sea salt pita chip. So order shipping absolutely free of charge. And if you're in the Carolinas, you'll get it 2 days from the day you order it. So do that. All right. Into the news, notes, and headlines. By the way, we have a great show. In just a few minutes, we'll be joined by Gamecock Central's Jack Veltri. And then we will be joined by Lulu Kesin, formerly of The Ringer and now beat writer for the Greenville News. And we lead off with women's basketball As it was announced yesterday, Ashlyn Watkin will miss the remainder of the season with an ACL injury. Her surgery will be scheduled in the coming weeks. Watkins closes the season ranked 4th in the SEC with almost 2 blocks per game. She was 2nd on the team in rebounding through 14 games. South Carolina will miss her. If you would have asked me the player South Carolina could least afford to lose this season, I would have said Ashlyn Watkin. And South Carolina does not have anybody like her. We'll discuss with Lulu how they go about dealing with the Ashlyn Watkin injury. Gamecock football stays hot in the transfer portal, picking up 2 commitments in 2 days. On Monday, Gamecocks added former Georgia military All-American center and current Troy center Boaz Stanley, 6'4", 310 pounds, out of Bogart, Georgia. He played 1 year at Georgia military in 22, was a JUCO All-American. I can't remember where he transferred, but in 2023 he was injured. He transferred to Troy, where he played almost 800 snaps at right tackle and at center. He will come in this weekend and enroll. And then last night, or late yesterday afternoon, Gamecocks picked up a commitment from the number 4 running back in the transfer portal, Utah State's Rasul Faison, 5'11", 215. He is one of those guys that gets an extra year due to the Diego Pavia rule. He started his career in junior college, went to Marshall, then went to another junior college, spent the last 2 years at Utah State, where he has been highly productive. 198 carries for 1,190 yards and 8 touchdowns this season. Last season, 118 carries, 736 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He is a good one and was very highly coveted in the transfer portal. Men's basketball tonight will host number 5 Alabama. That game will tip off at 7 p.m. Colonial Life Arena and will be broadcast on the SEC network. South Carolina will be without starting small forward Miles Studi for tonight and the foreseeable future, as he was diagnosed with a left lower leg DVT, which is a deep vein thrombosis. The street language for that is he has a blood clot in his lower left leg. That is a serious condition. Not only does he have to go on blood thinners, which if he gets hit and cut, it makes it hard for you to stop bleeding. But blood clots ended Chris Bosch's basketball career. Hopefully this is a one-time thing and not a recurring thing, but they will closely monitor this, because if a blood clot ruptures and, you could have a stroke, you could have a heart attack, you could die. This is a very serious condition, and so we are sending our thoughts and prayers to Miles Studi and his family for a speedy recovery. All right, good news for Gamecock football via my good friend Tony Morrell. I asked him this question yesterday in the Ask Tony thread because nobody seemed to know. And even yesterday, we didn't know. I couldn't get a straight answer on it. He couldn't get a straight answer on it. But finally, we have clarity. The number one junior college player in the country, defensive tackle Xavier Hardy, who flipped to South Carolina on signing day, he will enroll next week. This is huge for South Carolina football, as he will be able to go through winter workouts and spring practice and get acclimated. South Carolina losing their top four defensive tackles, TJ Sanders, who could be a first-round pick, Boogie Huntley, Tonka Hemingway, and DeAndre Jules. I think at least three of those will get drafted. So the Gamecocks have a lot of work to do there. We'll talk a little bit more transfer portal. Gamecocks have added former five-star defensive tackle Gabriel Dendy, 6'3", 310, from Texas A&M. Getting Hardy in is big. The Gamecocks hope and kind of expect to hear good news today from the number 8 defensive tackle in the transfer portal, Terry Webb, 6'3", 310, from Texas State. Webb also with offers from Auburn, SMU, and others. It would really be big for the Gamecocks to add him and one more if they can get him. He will announce today, which is his birthday. Former Lakewood High School product and NC State cornerback Brandon Cisse, 6', 180, begins his official visit at South Carolina today. The 6', 180-pounder is coming off an official visit to Ole Miss, where, according to Gamecock Central, Ole Miss tried to lock him down before he left. I like the Gamecocks' chances here. And so that would be another big pickup for South Carolina. Tomorrow night, the college football playoff semifinals get underway in Miami with the Capital One Orange Bowl at 7:30 on ESPN. 6th seed Penn State versus number 7 Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a 1.5-point favorite. James Franklin saying this morning, Abdul Carter, a game time decision. He is the most dominant player on that Penn State defense. Then Friday night, on my birthday, January the 10th, in Arlington at AT&T Cowboy Stadium in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl, it's number 5 Texas in what will basically be a home game for them. They will take on the hottest team in the country, Ohio State. Ohio State is a 5.5-point favorite in that one. And if the Ohio State team that played the last 2 weeks shows up, Texas is going down. And there's going to be nothing they can do about it. So we will see. So the Gamecocks currently have 10 transfer portal commitments. They hope to add Terry Webb today and Brandon Cisse. That would give them 12 commitments. I think the number's been 14 to 16, maybe 15. I do not think South Carolina will end up with a wide receiver in this portal period, because I don't think they're going to get a great one. I think they can get a good one, but Donovan Murph, who signed with South Carolina, made his commitment public at the Under Armour All-America game, and then went out and made a one-handed twisting catch. He's the cousin of Alshon Jeffrey. He's a lifelong Gamecock. South Carolina got him over Clemson, Ole Miss, Colorado, Tennessee, Alabama. Everybody wanted him. Everybody wanted Donovan Murph. They both reclassified. South Carolina got a good look at 5 of their transfer portal wide receivers in spring practice, bowl practice. Everyone except Murph joined. So I think they'll wait for those guys to go through the spring and then see who's available. But I do think the Gamecocks would like to add more players on the defensive side, defensive tackle, edge, linebacker, and possibly a field goal kicker. And with that, we say Happy New Year to our good friend from Gamecock Central, breaking down the videos. His brother goes to Clemson. I don't understand that. I guess you got a split family. But
Yeah.
Happy New Year. Welcome in.
Thanks, Keith. I appreciate you having me. And look, I don't know what's going on with not only my brother, but my sister goes to Clemson too. So I guess we didn't grow up with the rivalry. Like, we weren't born into it or anything. But I think I picked the better school, and going to South Carolina, and they're watching South Carolina win a lot of these games against Clemson. But it's always good to hop on with you, Keith, and Happy New Year to you.
Thanks. So, Jack, I got to ask, what was the best or your favorite Christmas present you got this year?
Oof. I got a lot of clothes and stuff. Just things like that. Nothing too crazy this year. I'm getting older now too. I'm 24, so just a lot of things like that. But nothing too crazy this year.
Well, my friend, on Friday, I will turn 61.
Wow.
So you're not getting old.
Yeah, not yet. Not that old yet, Keith. But
I mean,
happy early birthday.
I'm still in my prime.
Yes,
So,
you are. Yes, you are.
All right, so let's jump into it, Jack. You were at the Citrus Bowl. I wished all the Gamecocks a Happy New Year, but we were a sad bunch on Tuesday, New Year's Eve, after the Gamecocks fell to big fat Brett Belly, 21-17. Just your thoughts summarizing the game, and then we'll get into it, and we'll look ahead a little bit, and we'll end with the little men's basketball, which, quite frankly, is quite disturbing right now.
That's a good way to put it, Keith, about the men's basketball team. But, yeah, look, the football game, the Citrus Bowl, I've said it before on GC Live and whatnot. I don't think we're necessarily going – when we look back on this game, if you happen to do that 10, 15 years from now, and you're talking about it, I don't think you're going to really remember this game for the game itself. You're probably going to remember this game for the extracurriculars that happened on whatever day it was last week. New Year's Eve. Yeah, that game was a good one in that it was low scoring, was tight knit, literally a 4-point loss. Like, yeah, it was a pretty good game, all things considered. However, when you look at it from the standpoint of what happened in that game, or even after the game too, Shane Beamer, Brett Bielema kind of got their beef going during that game, and Brett walking over to check on an injured player, and then doing it was just, and then pointing it he said it wasn't at Shane Beamer directly. It was at the entire South Carolina team on the sideline, and it was all because he was kind of ticked off about Juju McDowell doing that motion, and that normally just means you're going to take a touchback on a kick return. But instead, Juju caught the ball, threw it across the end zone to Nick Harbor, takes it out of the end zone for 25 yards. So he wasn't happy about that. But then, in that same second half, we don't see Nicky Minwari out there. And as we come to find out, he just decided he wasn't going to play in the second half. And that was a whole mess. And, finding out after the game, that was his last game in South Carolina. Just a real bad look, I think, for Nick. And then he comes out in the days after. And I think it was the right thing to do. Obviously, he needed to make a statement on it. And he did so on Twitter. But to say you take some accountability for it is kind of whack to me. Like, just take full accountability for it. It was your decision, man. Own up to it. But then also to say you didn't quit on your teammates and stuff. While that is maybe true to some extent that you didn't quit on your team throughout the entire season, when you look at this game as just one singular game, you quit on your team. It's either playing the game fully or don't play at all. If you're scared of getting hurt, don't play. Make it easier than that. But yeah, so I'll remember the game for those reasons. But since I'm a reporter and covering this team is my job and stuff, and covering the game was my job, obviously the game itself could have been better for South Carolina. You missed out on a key opportunity to score that go-ahead touchdown in the final minutes of the fourth quarter when Lenore Sellers on fourth down gets pressured a little bit, has a guy in his face, and throws a ball to an open Josh Simon. It would have been a touchdown on just any regular, no guy in his face, no problem. But he faced pressure. The throw wasn't really on target and went in and out of Simon's hands. That wasn't the reason they lost the game, though. I mean, they had some other issues. I mean, the fake field goal where Kai Kroger didn't have the best ball thrown to Alex Huntley, and that could have been a touchdown. All things considered, it was a good play. Just wasn't perfectly executed, honestly. And then defensively, you had some relapses. Like, you didn't have the best, day defensively. It was still good enough. Like, you gave 21 points, not bad by any means. But I think the moral of the story is the reason I look at this game for how it went down, the offense just didn't finish. And you got onto the other side of the field more times than not. But when you look at, like, early in the game, first drive for South Carolina, they couldn't get a touchdown when they had all the momentum. They were driving down the field, and you end up with a field goal. And then you get down the field later in the game, and Alex Herrera misses a field goal that goes off the upright. So you really did do yourself in with missing out on some key opportunities. You probably should have won this game, to be honest. Like, as soon as you scored that first touchdown in the second half from the Oscar Attaway run, and then you get the interception by Jalen Kilgore, I'm thinking, like, all right, this team's going to get it going now. They'll be fine. Even though they're trailing, they'll be all right. Or I think they were ahead by that point. But they didn't take advantage of the momentum, and they gave Illinois a chance to make the comeback, which, of course, they did.
Yeah, I really thought the Jawarn Howell fumble was a turning point in the game. South Carolina did have all the momentum. I think we have to start with Lenore Sellers. He was 24 for 34, but he just never looked comfortable. Come to find out, Illinois changed their defense to a 3-safety look, very similar to Old Dominion. The first game of the season, in which Lenore Sellers struggled mightily. They had a safety basically like a spy, but 10 yards off the ball. And he never looked comfortable to me. When he missed throws, he missed badly. He was patient. He did take the underneath stuff, but he just did not look like the same guy. He couldn't find a rhythm, and even when he did run, he just did not run with the same wild abandon that we saw against Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Clemson. We just didn't see that. And, being there, seeing it during the game, could you kind of sense the same thing, that he just could not he just was never really comfortable during the game. It didn't appear to me.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I don't know. I can't remember at what point in the game I kind of I don't even know if I really noticed it at a certain moment where I'm like, okay, it just isn't his day. But it's once the sacks started to pile up a little bit, once he started to actually get hit by Illinois, that was when I was kind of like, all right, this is not this really isn't going to be the way it would have been otherwise in the Clemson and A&M games like that, Missouri, where he's able to just make things happen with his legs. I don't know what the deal with that was. Was it? I thought Mike Shula's play calling was fine. It wasn't bad by any means. And again, it wasn't super changed up. The only difference I really noticed with Shula's play calling was that they had an H-back, a fullback lined up next to Sellers in the backfield on some short run plays. And I think one of the big plays that they had was one of those where you have Maurice Brown lined up in a 3-point stance next to Sellers. I think it's the one that Oscar Attaway scored on. I could be wrong on that. But Sellers, though, you look at his numbers, it's not bad by any means. 71% completion rate, 260 yards, no interceptions. That sounds about right for him. It's just the fact that, you look at his rushing numbers. I mean, he did 19 yards, and that's not the norm for him. He's normally a guy that can run up and down the field. And I just felt throughout the game, even when Illinois wasn't getting to him for sacks and TFLs and stuff, he just didn't seem like he was ready to let it loose. And I don't know what the reason for that was. Again, maybe it was something with the play calling. Maybe it's just something where you don't want him to get hurt or whatever, but I don't know. It didn't feel like the norm for Lenoris. But the good news for South Carolina is if there's any silver lining from that game, even though he didn't look his best, he still gave you more than enough of a chance to win that game. Again, he didn't do anything inherently wrong. He didn't turn the ball over like crazy. He got hit a few times, obviously, and he missed on a big throw at the end of the game. But the fact that he's able to still get you down there, even without your A-plus stuff, even without your fastball, you're still able to get pretty close to winning that game. And obviously, you want to win at the end of the day. But I think Lenoris will be fine moving forward against. It's one game. You had it played in over a month. I mean, there's some rust to knock off, and look, Lenoris will be fine moving forward.
I mean, of that I have no doubt. So on the fake field, let's just talk special teams, which, quite frankly, were not special, and I have my own take on the alleged trick kickoff return. Number one, when I saw Kai Kroger run out there for the opening kickoff, I'm like, what in the hell are you doing? The only time that's worked was the onside kick against Alabama. It's like Shane Beamer has to prove to the world over and over and over again that he is the special teams guru in the world. That did not go well. And the rule in football, and if South Carolina would have done this, they would have won the game, is end every possession with a successful kick, whether that's a punt, a field goal, or an extra point. He can't do it to save his life. He cannot get out of his own freaking way. He has to fake a kick in every game, even when it's not there, like against Ole Miss. I don't even want to go through that coaching debacle again. But take the points. Make it 7-6 in the half. That would have been.
It was earlier in the second quarter, but I know what you mean.
That was that. So I don't know if that was after or before the touchdown.
I'm going to pull it up.
Maybe that's 10. Okay, then if Herrera, who barely made the one he made, makes the one before the half, which was a gimme field goal, South Carolina should have had 13 points at the half. Okay, then you get the touchdown. All right, stay with me. So instead of it being 21-17, Okay, South Carolina actually would have had the lead at that point with the ball late in the game. Even if you just kick the one you faked, it's 21-20. And all you need down there is a field goal. You run more clock. You're going to play. They're going to have to play differently on offense. You're going to play differently on defense with the lead. That one play, that one decision of not taking the points was a major deciding factor in the game. Now, it was not the only one. It was the out-of-way fumble. It was the missed field goal. It was the inability for Lenora Sellers to make some easy throws. A ball goes through Jalen Kilgore's hands that should have been his second interception when Illinois then drives down and retakes the lead. But I go back to the kicking game, and the kicking game cost South Carolina an opportunity to be in the SEC championship game and in the college football playoff. If South Carolina would have had a healthy Mitch Jeter, who we found out he suffered from a severe groin pull at Notre Dame. South Carolina beats LSU, they beat Alabama, and they beat Illinois because he is knocking down those kicks. And Alex Herrera, I thought last year South Carolina should have taken a transfer portal kicker. You had a guy going into his 6th year who had never attempted a field goal in a college football game. And that's why I think South Carolina desperately needs to add a field goal kicker in this transfer portal cycle.
For sure. I'm totally with you on that, Keith. Like, South Carolina, for everything that, hasn't been great in its history, I think field goal kicking has been pretty good over the last, 10 years. Like, you've had Parker White, obviously. You've had Elliott Fry. Mitch Jeter was pretty good when he was here at South Carolina. I know I'm missing some other names.
19 for 21.
Yeah, like, they've had some pretty good field goal kicking. And so when this year didn't go according to plan necessarily, when Alex Herrera didn't make the crucial field goals, like there's 3 field goals that I think of that kind of define how his season went. LSU, number 1, the missed field goal that I thought honestly was a pretty good kick. It just fell a little bit short in the final seconds on the last play of the LSU game. That wasn't the reason why South Carolina lost, but it's like, if he makes that, you go to overtime, you got some newfound momentum. I don't know. Things might happen. Then you have the Alabama game, which he was never making that field goal. No chance in the world. No chance. Not on the road in that environment in the fourth quarter. And then you have the missed field goal.
Mitch Jeter would have made it, though.
Maybe.
That's the problem.
Yeah,
maybe. That dude was money from 50, 51, 52 yards.
I feel better about Mitch kicking for sure. Yeah. And then you have the missed field goal that doinks off the upright against Illinois. And I just don't understand. Like you said, going back to your point about how South Carolina didn't take the points on the fake field goal. Again, I don't blame them for trying it. I think it was a well-designed play. If Kai gets more air on that ball and it's not so high arcing, lobbed in the air and hanging up for so long, I think South Carolina maybe has a chance to come down with it. Or even if you just throw, no disrespect to Boogie, I love covering the dude. But like if you had someone in there that's a pass catcher, maybe like a tight end or something, a big body that can go up for the ball like that, maybe you can haul in that pass. But I don't know. And then, that came after a 16-play drive. That is so disappointing that you didn't even come away with any points on that, chewing up so much clock. And then you miss a field goal attempt at the end of the first half. So, look, you're totally right. If South Carolina if it was 21-20 and you're in that final few minutes there, and you were down at like the 6-yard line, and you don't have to go for it there. You can literally just kick a field goal to take the lead. I don't know if South Carolina would have won the game because they couldn't stop Josh McCray, the running back for Illinois. seeing as he had a 60-yard run just like a play or two later after the turnover on downs at the end of the game. But yeah, the kicker situation, it's not good. Special teams in general, definitely a departure from what we saw under Pete Lembo, and I think it was always going to be. But again, I understand where you're coming from, and I'm sure this fan base feels the same way about how special teams, I think it got a little too cute at times this year. Again, like the Ole Miss one is the one that will always stand out to me as like one of the dumbest play calls I've ever seen, especially so early in the game on your first offensive drive in your own territory. Not to rehash the past too much, but it's just, I don't blame them in certain situations, but it's when it's stuff like that really puts you behind in a hole that's going to be too tough to get out of. That's where I have problems. So special teams is definitely an issue this year for South Carolina. We'll see what they do in the portal. Maybe they go get a kicker. Don't forget, they also had Mason Love as their guy from the 2024 class that I think will definitely have a significant role in 2024.
He's going to be the punter, though.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I do remember asking Joe DeCamillis about how the progress has been with that. And I think he ultimately will be the punter for Carolina, but they're gonna have to find someone, because the last thing you want is, let's say, I don't know what the eligibility case is with the other guys that are currently on the roster, but if it's like I think William Joyce may have transferred. I can't remember, but
all right. So hold on. So if they weren't better than Alex Herrera, they're not good enough. I don't think we need to really address that. I want to get to basketball, but first, I thought my biggest problem, I have to talk about this with Mike Shula and the officials. Okay, the officials are from the Big 12. That's basketball on grass.
Yeah.
No, they run here in Texas. They call it NASCAR. That's hurry up, no huddle. Teams aren't substituting on every play. And I don't think the officials knew how to deal with that because they don't really see it much. But I thought they allowed Illinois to really abuse the defensive substitution rule. You get 3 seconds to initiate a sub after, which to me, this is what Brett Bielema was doing. He was taunting South Carolina because he was kicking their ass with running down the play clock. The officials allowed him to abuse it. That's what he was doing. I mean, the kickoff to me is a total nothing burger. Number one, everybody's still in their lanes. Okay, if you're going to run a successful fake, you got to run that out of the end zone like Brandon Bennett did in 1994 at Clemson, where he threw it across the field to Reggie Richardson, who, if he hadn't run in the back of his own player at the 5-yard line, would have scored. Brandon Bennett scored on the next play anyway, which was the first play of the second half. Nobody was out of their lanes because he didn't run it out. You run it out up the sideline, guys are moving over. Then you throw it back, you set up the wall. There was no wall to be set up. That was a crappy play, but Bielema was taunting the sideline. Then finally, Mike Shula stopped substituting, which I don't know why they didn't do that after the first quarter, or certainly at halftime. Shane Beamer should have said, hey, bud, get personnel out there. Let's run some tempo. No subs. Let's get them on their heels. He never did that. Then finally they did. And then Illinois started faking injuries, and Brett Bielema was over there, his fat ass, laughing about it. Okay.
Yeah. So, I agree. Totally.
On Nick Emenwari, I wouldn't say that much about it if he hadn't have made such a big deal about how he was playing for his hometown, playing for his guys, final ride, going on the podcast, on social media. Then he starts the game. He doesn't tell anybody, I don't think.
No.
Because you were in the press box. Steve Fink didn't know because I was keeping up with it in real time. I got a phone call from somebody who was watching the conversation between him and Shane Beamer right before Derek Moore escorted him to the locker room. Beamer wasn't happy about it. He didn't know about it. And the bottom line is this. He's a 21-year-old kid, and my best friend, who was an athlete in high school, we had this conversation yesterday, and I said, I would think, when he's 30 or 40 or 50, and when he's a grown man, he'll look back on that and probably have a different opinion, because I know when I was 21, I did some stupid stuff. We both did. And he said, you know what? We did. But you know what? Neither one of us never quit on our team. And that is the bottom line. He quit on his team. He was the best defensive player on that team, and he quit on his team.
Totally. Absolutely, man. Like, there's no way around it. Like, and again, I mentioned it before. He mentions in his little Twitter statement that he didn't quit on his team. And by the way, he needs a better PR team than that. Like, that should not be the statement. I feel like he just wrote that and was like, yep, I'm just going to post it. Like, you got to be better than that, man. Like, you quit on your team. You didn't even have to say you did. You could just literally not include that part and just not mention it. But you're adding flames to the fire when you admit that you didn't quit. Like, you totally did. Like, what else do we call it? That I don't know what other way you really put it. Like, you wanted your other guys to get in there or something? Like, I don't know. But the fact that seemingly no one knew about it other than him, it felt like, if I had to guess how it went down, not to assume too much, but it's like he's probably in the locker room. South Carolina's in a 4-point game by that point, which is crazy that you even do that in that type of situation. He's probably just like, you know what? Sit in his locker. I'm not going to play the second half. I don't want to get hurt. It's like, and I wonder, the Cam Ward situation at Miami happened like days before, right in Orlando too. I wonder if that didn't happen, would he even have?
Well, that totally played a role in my opinion.
What's
Absolutely.
up?
Cam Ward, he played to break Deshaun Watson's record.
Which is so different, but I understand what you're saying, yes.
Yeah, I think if Cam Ward plays that game, number one, Miami definitely beats Iowa State.
They win. They beat Iowa State.
Big.
No problem.
But I agree. I think that played a major role. And then my question is, okay, if you informed your coach, who is your coach? Is that Torian Gray?
Got to be Torian Gray.
Is it Ahmad Smith, the assistant defensive back coach? Is it Clayton White? And if you did, why didn't that coach tell Shane Beamer? Because I would think that's something he would definitely want to know. And to me, that's another part of the internal matter that was not communicated to him. If, in fact, Eamon Warry did tell his coach. So, Jack, are we at DEFCON 5 with men's basketball? Because to me, this was not what I expected. I didn't expect another program record in wins, but I knew South Carolina would miss Talon Cooper and Meechie Johnson some, but I thought with Cam Scott coming back, they'd be able to, or coming in, they'd be able to find a really good point guard in the portal. But to me, we really shouldn't be shocked, should we? I mean, this team trailed PC and others at halftime. They lost to North Florida. But then you have the overtime win against Clemson. But to me, it also, and this is probably going to be the last question because I'm up against it. I just don't think Jamari Thomas or, no offense to Jacoby Wright, neither one of those dudes are SEC starting caliber players.
Yeah, to kind of break it down, Keith, this basketball team's got a lot of problems right now. I don't think the transfers have necessarily lived up to the expectations. And look, you're going to have some misses in the portal. I think that is what we have learned this year, is that not every year is going to be, you bring in Meechie Johnson the first year. He's a success, in my opinion, overall. Talon Cooper, BJ Mack, those guys were absolute, like, home run, bring in those guys, home run pickups. You're going to have some misses, and it just so happens that Nick Pringle, who's been fine this year, but you're asking him to play a role that he's never played before at the college level. And that's a big issue, number one. And then Jamari Thomas, you're kind of asking him to be the combination of what Michi and Talon were. Now, Jamari, for all intents and purposes, is a scoring guard. You're asking him to also be a distributor, and that's the role that Talon played so well, even though he could get a few buckets. So that's the problem right there, is that you're asking these guys to play different roles that maybe they're not fully accustomed to playing. And that's on them for not adjusting to some extent, but it's also on the coaching staff for just making the wrong reads with who they were bringing in. And it happens. But there's so many other issues. The turnovers are through the roof. The slow starts are getting to a point where if South Carolina gets off to a slow start tonight, they're done. Like, you can pretty much write your game story and know what's going to happen the rest of the way if this team doesn't get into an offensive rhythm and they give up buckets right out of the gate. So a lot of problems with this team. That game in Starkville was miserable having to go to that. That was awful game. You knew it was over in the first few minutes of the game. Like, as soon as Josh Hubbard from Mississippi State hit those pair of threes to start the game, it felt over, in my opinion. Things could change tonight. I don't expect a lot to change. It's at home, so that's the only benefit, really, in my opinion. I hope a good crowd shows up. But you're in a situation where you're playing two of the best teams in college basketball this week, in Alabama and Auburn. If you lose these two games, you're in an 0-3 hole in SEC play. And with how dominant this conference has been this year, easily the best in college basketball this season, I don't think you're getting out of it. Like, you're going to end up being like a Missouri last year, where, not saying you go winless in SEC play, but you're in a situation where you're probably not making the tournament, to be honest.
Jack, you get the last word. Great stuff as always. And we'll probably talk more dreadful basketball in the future, unfortunately. But Happy New Year to you. Man, you're killing it at Gamecock Central, on social media, on the videos, the podcast. Keep up the great work. Great stuff today. We'll look forward to catching up with you down the road. Be well, my friend.
I always appreciate it, Keith. Thanks so much. Happy New Year. I'll see you again soon.
All right. Before we bring in Lulu Kesin, let me tell you today's show is powered by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks is your go-to daily fantasy sports app. So we know it's NFL playoff time. It's now or never. Don't miss out on these last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks. Again, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. Prize Picks also invented the flex play, which means if you can still cash out even if one of your picks isn't a winner. You can still double your money with Prize Picks. Prize Picks puts their members first. Withdrawals are easy and fast, safe and secure. When my picks hit, I get my money as quick as 15 minutes. So sign up today. Download the Prize Picks app in the Apple Store or Google Play and get $50 instantly with your first $5 play. Enter the code Gamecocks to get $50 absolutely free after you make your first $5 lineup. So let me tell you my Prize Picks lineup for this week. Okay, it's very simple. All you have to do is pick the sport, pick NFL, and then simply pick more or less for at least two players. Make a $5 bet. Like I said, you get $50 after your first $5 play. So I got Russell Wilson. The line is more or less than 201.5 yards passing. I'm taking more. Derrick Henry, more or less than 99.5 yards rushing. I think Pittsburgh's going to really stack it up and make Lamar Jackson beat them with his arm. So I'm going to take less than 99.5. Last week, I took the over on Derrick Henry, and he delivered. And then George Pickens back. He's Russell Wilson's favorite target, more or less than 54.5 yards receiving. I'm taking more, okay? So, again, download the app and use the code Gamecocks to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize picks, run your game. All right, let's welcome back into the program a big Boston Celtics fan, just like me. Celtics, I stayed up too late last night watching them go on a 13-0 run in the fourth quarter after they let Denver without two starters play way too close, but they won. Celtics won that game. Lulu, Happy New Year. Tell us what's your favorite Christmas present you got?
Happy New Year. Yes, good that the Celtics pulled it together in the fourth quarter. Was worried about them in the second half. My favorite Christmas present I got. I like giving gifts more, so I like have those programmed in my head, but I did get a very nice necklace for Christmas, so I'll say that.
Very nice. All right, so let's get right to it. Ashlyn Watkin's Sunday in Starkville. Just had her left leg in the wrong position, and unfortunately, she will miss the rest of the season with a torn ACL. And Lulu, before the season, I thought she was the player South Carolina could least afford to lose. She's the only underclassman in the history of the NCAA tournament to have 20 rebounds in a Final Four game. Not only that, she's their leading shot blocker, the best athlete on the team. She's had a dunk in a game in each of her 3 seasons at South Carolina. She's a dependable scorer. She's a freak athlete. She can switch on the perimeter and guard. She can block shots from anywhere on the floor. What is the impact of this loss for South Carolina women's basketball?
Yeah, it's a huge loss. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Ashlyn is an instrumental part of the team, especially this year. Definitely, I'm personally not ready to kind of write off the team in terms of bigger goals towards the end of the year. I definitely don't know how it will impact them, tomorrow, let alone in March or April. As much as I can sit here and say and look at her statistics, and obviously I follow her closely and I've seen her impact, but South Carolina is kind of one of those teams that surprises you. And when you think maybe they're down for the count, they kind of like get back up and revive themselves. So I'm curious, honestly, to see how, okay, Ashlyn's fully out now, what that means for this team, because it's tricky. I mean, you think about like August, and it's like no one knew when Ashlyn would be back. No one knew how much, or I should say September, because the arrest happened the 31st. So it's like, if this was any other player, I think the mental side of it is different. And I'm not taking away from Ashlyn's importance when I say that. I just mean like it's even wonkier that South Carolina had to prepare for kind of this unknown of when she would return. She returns and has this immediate impact, and now she's gone again. It's a very like up and down type of thing, which is different than, a player that was, there for most of preseason, all season, and then had an injury. So it's a huge loss. I think South Carolina just needs more from the players that they have now. I don't think they necessarily are lacking a player, if that makes sense. I don't think it's Dawn, not doing well in the transfer portal and didn't get the right people to fill it. I think South Carolina has what they need. They just simply need their players to play better without Ashlyn.
Yeah, I mean, Sanaya Fagan has just been a total enigma during her time at South Carolina. I mean, 2 years ago, Dawn Staley said she was the most talented post player on the roster, and that's when Aaliyah Boston was on the team. But she has just not produced at the level I think, a lot of Gamecock fans expected from her. I think even that she's expected from her. And quite frankly, though, I don't think she's a back to the basket player. I think she's more of a forward that's a face-up player. But so is Chloe Kitts, and so is Miriam Dowda. And, then there's Joyce Edwards. The last time South Carolina had a loss to a starting post player was 2017. Elena Coates went out. And quite frankly, I think if Elena Coates would have stayed healthy, South Carolina would not have won the national championship that year because she was just too big. She clogged it up for Asia Wilson and for everybody else. Dawn Staley changed the lineup after that injury, played 4 perimeter players with Asia Wilson. South Carolina, that opened it up, and it opened it up for the best player in the world, quite frankly. I told her when she was a junior in college, I said, "You're the best player in the world. You just don't know it yet." And that has proven to be true. But there's no Asia Wilson on this team. Breezy Hall, I think, still can't reprogram her mind to understand she's not still just a role player. They call her Big Shot Breezy. She's not really produced. Raven Johnson got off to a slow start. Dawn Staley even admitting that Raven probably did not put in the work she needed to over the summer. Pow Pow not shooting at the same rate she did last year. I'm just going to call it the full Wally Funk. She's kind of like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. But I think South Carolina may have to change how they play without Ashlyn Watkin. I thought her impact would especially be significant in SEC play because Texas has big players. Oklahoma has Reagan Beers. LSU has big-time athletes. UConn is a much different team this year. Those are the teams, to me, I thought Ashlyn would be the most impactful in the biggest games. But I just think everybody now has got to pick up their level of play, and they've got to match their opponent's intensity, which they did not do in the first quarter Sunday in Starkville. They trailed by as many as 11 points. Jerkayla Jordan scored 12 points, 18 in the first half. She was unstoppable, but I thought that looked like the men's team in Starkville. I was wondering if Lamont Paris was still on the sideline. But when that second quarter came and Tessa Johnson and Joyce Edwards and others were inserted into that lineup, it completely changed. South Carolina just went on a 3-point barrage over the next 2 periods, outscoring Mississippi State 55-23 on their way to a blowout win.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely worried at the beginning of the season about these slow starts. And in some ways, obviously, I still am. I think that you can't afford to have a really slow first quarter against a team like Tennessee or LSU or Texas. But I hear, Dawn was on Carolina Calls last night, and she was very much like people need to trust me. If I'm not worried, then you shouldn't be too. And like, obviously take that. However, obviously people are going to have different emotions than the head coach does. And that doesn't mean the head coach is, you have to mirror her emotions. But at the same time, like, I get what she was saying in the sense of like these teams that are, let's just call it what it is, not as talented as South Carolina are going to give 150% at tip-off. And then they're not going to have the depth, they're not going to have the skill, and likely not going to have the stamina to keep it up. I think that's exactly what happened against Mississippi State. And like, you hear these announcers that are like, against South Carolina, the game can get away from you very quickly. And so I think as long as South Carolina is recognizing the difference between games like Mississippi State and games like Texas, I don't think there's much to worry about. And I don't think that's them playing down to their competition. I think that's them understanding like this team is not going to shoot like this for the entire half. This team isn't going to play us, press us and face guard us from full court for the entire game. They don't have the physical ability to do that. If South Carolina doesn't recognize the difference in, turning it on. And I don't even think it's a matter of them not, quote unquote, like not coming out with full effort. It's just that they're kind of being more strategic maybe with how they're playing than just, throwing 110% of effort. I think South Carolina really needs to prove that they recognize the difference between a bad quarter versus a very good SEC team and a bad quarter versus a very bad SEC team. And they haven't really played a really strong SEC team yet. So that's why I think Sunday is going to say a lot more about kind of a lot of things, because it's hard for me to really gauge their growth in their intelligence right now when they've kind of played how you'd expect them to when Missouri, Mississippi State comes out super strong. And I wrote about this, I think, in this week's scouting report, or maybe it was for Mississippi State because they had a couple of like tall players. It's like South Carolina did a really poor job of defending both Lauren Betts and Kiki Rice and Gabriella and like everybody on the perimeter. Then TCU happens and they take away Sedona. They basically take away Haley. Like, they've proven both sides of playing, talented players, both inside and outside of the paint. I'm curious to kind of see what side they lean into now and where they actually kind of build a consistent trend of, because they're going to face teams that have, like Texas, that have a Madison Booker inside the paint, and then they have a ton of guards that will make you pay if you leave them open on the three-point line.
Yeah, no doubt. So, I know Dawn Staley did say Tessa Johnson, because of her performance in practice and coming off a career-high 22 points on Sunday. She had 14 points alone just in that second quarter, 5 of 7, 4 of 5 from downtown. She ended up with 22 points on 8 of 11, 4 of 6 from 3, and 2 for 2 from the free throw line. To me, it's been kind of clear since the Elite Eight game against Oregon State and Reagan Beers, when South Carolina punched their ticket to the Final Four. Tessa Johnson led the team in scoring in that game. She was instrumental in both games in the Final Four, was the leading scorer in the national championship game. To me, she is one of the 5 best players on this team, but she doesn't start because Dawn Staley is going to stick with her veterans. But I wonder now, I know she's still going to stick with the starting lineup, but I wonder now if we see South Carolina play a smaller lineup, like when you take out one of your post players, you bring in Tessa Johnson and you play Breezy Hall kind of at the 4 spot, and you play with either Joyce Edwards or Chloe Kitts, who you really can play a 5-out offense, or you play with Sanaya Fagan and you have a more spread offense where you can drive and kick 2 open shooters. You have more driving lanes and more space for a crafty player like Sanaya Fagan and Joyce Edwards, who I think also deserves more minutes, to have more room to operate in the post.
Yeah, obviously you're right. Dawn isn't going to change her starting lineup. I think she kind of gave a little bit more insight into that last night than I had heard her before. I would say she gets offended when people ask if she's going to change the starting lineup, but she's just very clear that she's not. Whereas last night she kind of explained that she has a certain group of players who can mentally handle when teams give, like we were talking about, like 150% from the start. They can kind of weather that storm. And then she has certain players that come off the bench and bring a different type of physical energy that isn't necessarily so, she isn't depending on them to carry the mental load of what these teams are throwing at them. So I understood what she was saying there. I think it's less about the 5 best players starting the game for Staley and more of being very specific with her substitutions, with the timing and who's going in when, because she knows that every single player on her team does something, different than the other, but also is just better in certain moments than and I think, like you were saying with Joyce and Tessa, like those minutes are going to come, especially without Ashlyn. Like Dawn isn't going to sacrifice a win for protecting her players' feelings. Like if Bree Hall isn't shooting and Tessa is, Dawn isn't going to say, all right, well, Bree needs to get more minutes or else she's going to be sad. Like that's not what it's about. She's been clear that Bree understands when she isn't getting the minutes. Like I think especially now in SEC play, these kind of weird equal minutes aren't going to be a trend anymore. I think Staley is very much going to reward whoever is playing well. And right now, certain players are consistently performing better than others. And I think with the type of matchups that Joyce Edwards and Sanaya are going to have, they're naturally going to be forced to kind of assert themselves in the paint. I hear what you're saying about Sanaya not necessarily being that, the textbook kind of, her and Chloe play very similar. So it's interesting to have them together. And I think that if I'm not mistaken, I could be kind of forgetting here, but consistently Joyce has been subbing in for Sanaya. So I do wonder, I could be wrong and they could not necessarily be working together, but like, I do wonder what a Sanaya and Joyce kind of duo looks like in the paint. And if maybe Joyce is coming off the bench for Chloe rather than necessarily Sanaya the first sub out. Because I think that their play style might complement each other a little bit better than how Chloe and Fagan are kind of doing or are looking for the same similar shots. And that obviously takes away one player if you have 2 trying to do the same thing.
I completely agree. So when South Carolina faces these teams that have bigger players, like Texas has Kayla Oldacre, who is 6'6" and easily 250 pounds. Is it going to be Sakima Walker? Is it going to be who is the next post player? Because, I like the limited minutes I've seen from Adele Tack. To me, she has the most upside. Sakima Walker, bless her heart, she's just so slow and indecisive. She does give you 5 fouls. Miriam Dowda, who averaged 6.5 rebounds and actually led the SEC in shot blocking last year. To me, she's been up until this point essentially an afterthought, a non-factor. I know Adele Tack's still shaking off the rust, still, getting her ability to play in spurts. Do you think we'll see more of her against these teams that have bigger players?
Yeah, if I had to say, I think Adele Tack will be the one that is off the bench the most when facing these kind of taller opponents. Sakima obviously is kind of like, it's hard because she was working to kind of get ready for this season, and then she had some ankle injuries, whereas Tack is kind of in this full recovery mode of consistently just trying to get better, whereas it feels like Sakima's trying to just get healthy, and that's a different mindset to work with. Dauda, to me, my perspective is, it just seems like she's really trying to play a guard when she's out there because she quote unquote can shoot the three. And I feel like she isn't leaning into what South Carolina needs right now, whether that's, and I'm not saying it's entirely her. Hey, we don't know what Dawn and the coaches are telling her when she subs in, but like, I don't have an issue when she shoots a three when they're up 40, but it's also like, that's a chance for you to kind of show what you can do inside the paint and establish a little bit of offensive dominance and figure out kind of who you are on the South Carolina team as a forward. And it's just been a lot of like garbage minutes shooting threes. And so I don't have like a full read on her, but I do feel as though she's maybe leaning into the more guard side of her play, which like Joyce Edwards could do the same thing, but I feel like she knows that South Carolina needs her way more as a forward right now. So it's kind of that like recognition and figuring out. And I mean, I don't blame Dauda. She's, like Dawn was saying last night, she was behind six forwards / centers in the lineup. So it's kind of hard. You naturally, I imagine, I'm like, all right, well, I'm not getting minutes there. Might as well show that I can do something else. But it's like South Carolina doesn't need 3-point shooting from their third string players either. Like, I feel for her and her figuring out her place on this team, especially as a transfer. But I think with Watkins down, she's going to need to buy into the fact that she's a very talented post player who caught Dawn Staley's attention last year and in the portal because of what she did inside the paint.
I agree. So last one, to me, you know, kind of another enigma on this team has been Chloe Kitts. I mean, she'll have a game like Sunday, 17 points, 10 rebounds. She's had several double-doubles, but then she's had games where she's been essentially a non-factor. I think Chloe Kitts has got to step up her game and be a driving force for South Carolina if they're going to have the kind of season that come with the expectations that this team has.
Yeah, and I think consistency it's tricky with a player like Chloe. Like Dawn was like, she was due, you know, she doesn't always get the stats for the work that she's putting in. I think that's fine. Like, yes, she's working very hard, but like the other game, I think it was 2 games ago, she took 4 shots. Like, you can't take 4 shots if you're one of the best players on South Carolina. That's not going to cut it in the SEC. Like, it's almost being too unselfish, which I think Chloe kind of fell into, like a weird loophole or a weird pattern, I guess, is a better way of putting it. She's working hard. She's clearly up to speed with the team. She's a totally different player than who she was even last year, let alone when she first started with the program. But I think in general, she has to just take more shots and establish way more of a presence on offense because she's way too good and way too important not to. And I'm hoping now that they're not up, you know, in these games where she's playing Charleston Southern and Wofford, that she's recognizing that, because I think it was the Missouri game. She was like 1 of 4 from the field. And I just don't get how that happens as a player with her talent. So definitely that needs to change, and I'm hoping it will for, you know, her sake and her mental sake and everything with Watkins out, that she understands her importance going forward.
But don't you think she needs to play more outside of the paint? Like, to me, she is a face-up stretch player. She is a good perimeter shooter. Don't take a 19-foot jump shot. That drives me crazy. If you're going to shoot from there, you might as well be behind the 3-point line. I think she can stretch the defense. She can make jump shots. That forces, if a post player is guarding her and they come out on her, then she has the ability to put it on the deck and get to the cup. And for me, I see her way too much on the block with her back to the basket.
Yeah, well, she's crafty. She's definitely scrappy. Like she's talented and she can do a lot. And I agree. I think she needs to do both. Like plain and simple, I think she needs to. She doesn't, in my opinion, she does a really good job reading defenses. So I think she just needs to be more consistent in looking to score wherever that is and whatever the defense is giving her. Because I thought the Michigan game, which seems like a lifetime ago at this point, like we saw a Chloe Kitts that worked against the defense and that was able to, figure it out, for lack of a better. She just was able to figure it out and score, and she wanted to score. She came across very hungry, and I think that's sort of that weird spark has been missing lately. Well, it's weird that spark has been missing lately. Yeah.
No doubt about it. Lulu, thank you so much. Great insights as always. Go Celtics, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Yes,
Have
go
a great
Seas.
rest
Thanks
of the
for
week.
having me. Yeah, you too. Bye.
All right, that was Lulu Kesin from the Greenville News. So congratulations to Jake Bentley, who's named head coach at Nation Ford High School in Fort Mill. In the chat box, I think everybody's got a consensus. Clint says what Cam Ward did was just as bad, if not worse, than even Morey. I think that was more of a team thing. Plus, Cam Ward probably is the best. To me, will probably be. Well, I don't know if he will be, because from now to April, the NFL, they overanalyze and put way too much stock in guys in shorts at choreographed workouts. But I thought he was the best quarterback in the country. Ed, I agree. Kai Kroger's probably the Max Runiger is the first punter I remember. He was unbelievable. He had a long career in the NFL. I think Kai Kroger is even better than him. I would agree with that. On the fake field goal, Kai has made great passes throughout his career. I mean, up until I think last year, I think he had only missed one pass. So I think we all agree South Carolina's got to improve. And Pete Lembo, South Carolina misses him. I'm not taking a shot at Joe DeCamillis. He's a legend, but it's just not the same. By the way, congratulations to Pete Lembo, leading Buffalo to their only the third victory ever, or 9-win season in their program history. That's going to do it for me until next week. We'll be back, same bat time, same bat channel. God bless all of you. I'm out of here.